Yeah, okay. So I wanted to start with just a very small video clip that I think gives you a very good overview on what we're talking about with this British slave system that Diane is referring to, that we fought a successful revolution against. So if you could just show that.
The slavery system, destroying the southern United States, was a critical part of a worldwide British economic system to which Adam Smith gave the name free trade. Beginning in West Africa, the British East India Company, Royal Africa Company, and others captured slaves. These slaves were shipped to the Western Hemisphere to create the slave plantation system of the southern United States. The principal product of this system in the 19th century was cotton, 75% of which was exported to England. Here, English peasants worked for shillings to turn the cotton into low-quality textiles, which were then sold in India, the crown jewel of the empire. The Indian subjects, denied the right by the British to produce for themselves, paid for the textiles with opium crops. The Indian opium was then shipped from India to China, where it was forced on the Chinese people for enormous profit, addicting millions to the life-sucking drug. The profits from this cycle, characterized by East India Company lackey Adam Smith as buying cheap and selling dear, was the foundation of the empire's existence. An interruption of any one part was an interruption to the whole.
In dealing with vulgar-minded bullies, and such unfortunately the people of the United States are, nothing is gained by submission to insult and wrong. The U.S. have no navy of which we need be afraid, and they might be told that if they were to resort to privateering, we should, however reluctantly, be obliged to retaliate by burning all their seacoast towns.
So while the British were promoting, along with their Dutch allies and others, this slave system in the Americas, because it wasn't just in the United States, it was all through, as most people know, in South America, etc. And you can go to the first slide here. They flooded China with opium over decades, to the point where it was completely destroying the entire country. Really to the point where the country was ungovernable because all of the top, or many of the top, government officials were addicted, and they became completely dysfunctional, and the place was just about to disintegrate. Along came this patriot, Lin Zexu, and he decided enough is enough. We're going to stop this. We're going to have a war on drugs, a real one, and we're going to annihilate this threat to our country. We're going to save our country. He got a few compatriots to work with him. They rounded up all the opium and they burned it, and destroyed it, in an act of desperation to save their nation. The British response was, you can't do this. This is our property. You've interfered with our system, or as the video said, this was a threat to our entire free trade system. And as you heard Lord Palmerston say in the end there, Lord Palmerston was the Foreign Secretary of Queen Victoria, who was the Queen of England at this time. And she was the sat on top of, the board of directors of this global enterprise, which the British were running. And so what did they do? They send the entire British Navy, or a large chunk of it, to China. And they, said, okay, give us the money. We want it, $21 million right now. And the Chinese said, no, you're destroying our country. We're not giving you a nickel. Forget about it. And they said, okay, we're opening up fire on, one city. Boom, obliterated. Because, of course, the Chinese had no modern firepower. They didn't have cannons. They didn't have these type of gunships. They obliterated an entire city. Chinese said, well, we're going to try to fight back. They tried to fight back for a year or two. And basically, the British were going to annihilate the entire country, city by city by city by city. Literally, it destroyed the entire nation. The Chinese had no option, and at a certain point said, okay, what do you want? We give up. And so the British said, okay, here's the deal. Here's what we want. We want our money right away. But if you can't give it to us right away, we'll take a third of it right away. So they had to drain their treasury. And this is all under a threat of British gunboats sitting right there in the harbor of what is today Hong Kong. So there they are in the harbor, and in fact, they forced the Qing officials, the Chinese officials, to come on board the ships to sign the treaty. And the other condition was they said, we want this island here. And the island is what we call today Hong Kong. And they just took it. They took the island. I mean, that would be like some power coming to America today, flooding our country with heroin, destroying us, and then sending over an army to kill us all if we resisted, and then defeating us and saying, okay, we'll take Manhattan, now that we've defeated you, or something equivalent to that. And that's what they did. And then they basically, the other demand was, we're going to take 5 of your major ports, and these are going to be ports open to us, run by us for trade. So we can extract goods from your country and sell them cheaply abroad. And these are ports that you know today as Canton, Shanghai, Ningpo, Fuzhou, Xiamen, these types of places. That wasn't enough. Then there was a second Opium War in which they extracted even more wealth and more cities, etc. Now I want to go to the next slide because I want to contrast this with the approach of, well, this is actually just a picture of the Opium Wars. You can go to the next slide. This is Abraham Lincoln's economist, Henry Carey. And he wrote a book in 1851 called The Harmony of Interests. And this is just a little section of it, but it gives you an idea of how we American patriots of the period were completely conscious of the difference between our approach to economy in the world and this British global system. He says, 2 systems are before the world. One looks to underworking the Hindu and sinking the rest of the world to his level. The other to raising the standard of man throughout the world to our level. One looks to pauperism, ignorance, depopulation, and barbarism. The other in increasing wealth, comfort, intelligence, combination of action, and civilization. One looks toward universal war. The other towards universal peace. One is the English system. The other we may be proud to call the American system, for it is the only one ever devised, the tendency of which was that of elevating while equalizing the condition of man throughout the world. Such is the true mission of the people of these United States, to raise the value of labor throughout the world. We need only to raise the value of our own. Now you can go to the next slide. This was not new with Henry Carey, and I just want to talk about this very briefly. I'm going to reference it. There's tons of more material on this if anybody's interested in it. But very early on, circles around John Jay, circles around Hamilton, later John Quincy Adams, people close to the founding fathers, set up something called the American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions. The intention of this was to send Americans abroad all over the globe. The idea was take this conception of the Declaration of Independence, these things that Diane went through, because our idea was not that we're just going to end here, but we're going to go to places like India. We were going to go to places like China and say, hey, you don't have to live under this slave system. You can overthrow it like we did right here. You can do the same thing. Go to the next slide. And this is one of the people that, for example, went to China. His name is David Abeel. He's from New Jersey, was from New Jersey. He met one of the resistors of the Opium Wars in China, this fellow that you see on the right, Xu Jiyu. He taught him all about the British Empire. He taught him all about how we defeated the British Empire. This guy, Xu Jiyu, was so enamored by this, he fell in love with George Washington. He wrote the first Chinese atlas ever created in modern times. This atlas and this knowledge helped the Chinese resist further incursions into their territory. You can go to the next slide. This is Anson Burlingame. This was Lincoln's ambassador plenipotentiary to China. He was the first minister of the Chinese nation to countries abroad. Well, you say, how could that be? He's an American. Yeah, that's right. He's an American. That is after our Civil War, after we defeated this evil Confederacy, backed by the British, by the way, right? We had an American who said, okay, now it's time that the powers of the world recognize China as a sovereign country. So an American took a Chinese delegation to capitals all over the world to recognize China as a sovereign nation. You can go to the next slide. This is Sun Yat-sen on the bottom left. He was also a student of these Americans. He adopted Lincoln's idea of the three principles of the people: government of the people, by the people, for the people. He used this to create the first constitution, the first modern nation of a Chinese nation in 1911. Both Xi Jinping, the current president of China, and Hu Jintao, the former president of China, were students, are students of Sun Yat-sen. So this has nothing to do with communism, nationalism, or anything else like this. And you see here, this is a postage stamp from 1942 during the Second World War, which you could buy and put on your letters for 5 cents, of Lincoln and Sun Yat-sen. And I could go on and on. There's, again, if people are interested, I can provide you the articles and stuff. A lot of this is original research, which I've done, but, a lot of it's known by other people too. And you can go to the last slide here. And I truly believe that this is not an accident that this patriot president that we have, Donald Trump, who really loves his country, who really has a desire, and you may fault him here and there and dislike what he says here or don't like his tweets or whatever, but he does have a genuine desire to serve his nation and save his nation. And he is bumped into this other profound patriot who has the same desire for his nation, Xi Jinping of China. And that's why he keeps saying, my dear friend, my dear friend, my dear friend. He's for his country, I'm for my country. Well, it's not just some nice little thing. Behind this is 200 and some years of history of this kind of collaboration between the United States, American patriots, and Chinese patriots fighting the same enemy, fighting this evil British imperial slave dope system. And that's what we're fighting today. And that's why our president is under the same attack by these people and the same people that are attacking China actually are the same people that, are attacking the president. We can go into that if we want with some of the questions. So anyway, that's what I have in a nutshell.